You have not seen what I have seen. I have seen much. You have not seen what I have seen. Really, Galadriel? What did you see? I bet you saw some orcs, didn't you? Did you see orcs, huh? I'm sure you did. Did you see a Balrog, maybe? Oh, you must have seen trolls, right? Because I saw the way you really whipped that ice troll after you allowed it to kill several of your little squad there. You kind of stood aside, watched how they got killed. Then you came in there and he's gone, right? So you must have seen an ice troll. Would you care to share? No? Mum's the word? Oh, I'm sorry. Got a little bit carried away there playing with my action figures. Now, having spent $1 billion on roughly on Rings of Power, you'd think that Amazon would really be into licensing all kinds of, right, to kids. This is kind of rated like a kid's, or it's kind of scripted that only kids might enjoy it, although it's a little too violent places for kids. But I went on Amazon's own website to see if they had action figures for Rings of Power. Nothing, nothing. They did have a separate tab for merchandise, which I didn't go to, but then I was looking for action figures because I kind of wanted to replicate this abysmal, awful, just horrible dialogue between Galadriel and Elrond, which kind of sums up in just a minute how bad everything about the writing in the show is. And, I had to find some kind of figurine. So what did I end up with? Figurines from the movie Frozen, which I've never watched, and they're not very good replicas. Okay, Galadriel, instead of being dressed in scale mail and carrying a 2.5-handed sword, she's just got a little book there. But at least she's got blonde hair, right? And Elrond there, he doesn't look nearly as wimpy as he does in the TV. I can't do this right. He doesn't look nearly as wimpy as he does in the TV show. And he's got a sword, which you never see him carrying a sword in season 1 of Rings of Power. But hey, he's got kind of dark hair. I know, and it's still a little too dark, and he's not dressed the same, but this is the best I could come up with just to illustrate this awful, awful dialogue. It's mind-boggling. I mean, Amazon wanted to make a big hit, a big splash, and they have succeeded. Well, to me, they've succeeded in 2 ways or 3 ways. They've generated an unprecedented amount of publicity and commentary about their show, although 90% of it is negative. So that's probably not quite the direction they had in mind, but they did succeed in generating a lot of attention. Secondly, I've mentioned this before, who knew that they would have produced a masterpiece? This thing might be discussed in college and university classes for, I don't know, a generation or longer as to how not to film a series or a movie, could be extended to movies, how not to write dialogue, how not to write and direct action sequences, how not to write a plot, how not to pace the movie, how not to introduce characters. I mean, the list just goes on endlessly about, it's kind of remarkable how many aspects, virtually every aspect of making the TV show, they did wrong. So it's a wonderful teaching opportunity, and a lot of videos on YouTube have taken full advantage of that. The latest one that I watched, it had nothing to do with just a dialogue scene there, as I just showed you, but I'm going to reference it because this was just one of many critiques about how badly they handled the action sequences. This one is called, it's pretty recent, Why the Rings of Power Sucks, a Scene Comparison. That's by Jedi Brooks. Check it out. It breaks down the fight scene between Arondir and huge troll dude in Rings of Power, comparing that with Aragorn versus orcs in Peter Jackson's trilogy, and shows in many ways, he didn't cover everything, but he shows in many ways how bad the action is. Anyhow, the real central problem with the show, of all of the problems, is that it fails to get the audience actually interested in the characters. Now, everybody complains that Galadriel, as many are calling her, is a thoroughly unlikable character. In fact, she seems more like she should be the villain than the heroine. And I think the show writers had some dim notion of that, and they probably want to try to, I don't know, maybe they want to make her change. Well, one could only hope. But, they also have this idea about, female empowerment and all that. Why is it that these writers and many other writers, their conception of empowering females is to make them a caricature of toxic testosterone masculinity? That's exactly what she is. If you look at the Galadriel in Peter Jackson's films, there is an empowered female, and she's married too. They didn't shuffle her husband off to the side by claiming that he's dead. She had the husband. She was the queen, was the king of their region, but she was wonderful, and she was compassionate, and she was kind, and she was helpful, but she was also queenly. These guys don't get that. They think they have to make Galadriel the most hostile, the most aggressive, most violent, most impulsive, most inconsiderate, most lacking in social skills, most power hungry, most revengeful, all the things that you would associate with a toxic male. They're going to make her that and better. That's their idea of female empowerment. I mean, this is why the show, it's not just about Galadriel, it's about everything in the writing and in the directing, and as a consequence in the acting and the plot. Oh my God. Anyhow, I was saying, you've got to make your audience care about the characters. Visuals can be really terrible, but if the story is compelling and you get attached to the characters, you watch it. Why do people read books? You don't have any visual at all, no audio. You have the words on the page, but when they get you engaged in the characters, you can't set it down. Unfortunately, these showrunners, these script writers have no idea how to make an audience care about a character. You can even start with a character that's basically awful. If you present the fact right up front that, this guy is not a good guy, and then gradually lead the audience into his journey. An example would be Squid Games, the unexpectedly popular Korean TV show that was a big hit in the US. They couldn't believe it. But, the main character there, he's really not very likable. He's a loser. But you see, you acknowledge right up. You just tell the audience right up front, we know this guy's a loser. And we know there's a lot of things not to like about him. And then you see how he kind of feels compelled to get into this game. And then you see him evolve, and the audience starts kind of rooting for him, not just to succeed in the contest, but also to become a better person. But they didn't do that with Galadriel. I mean, if you had started out saying, Galadriel is really one of the worst of the elves, and even all the other elves hate her for good reason, and then let's see how she become better. Maybe they could have sold that, but you see, everybody knew that Galadriel was supposed to be a heroine. I mean, Tolkien's books established that. Peter Jackson's movies followed the same script, and they weren't about to present her as bad elf up front. You're supposed to think that she's some kind of a heroic elf, and yet everything that she says or does contradicts that. And then you start to think, why am I watching this? This is absurd. Or other characters like Arondir, who says almost nothing. You just watch him act, and yeah, he's kind of fun to watch. But I mean, if he died, would how much would we care? It's like, oh well, I kind of liked him. Too bad. And strangely, they made on purpose. Of course, they made that orc dude Adar one of the more interesting characters in the whole first series, but he's supposed to be a bad guy. They make him more sympathetic than Guy Ladriel. Anyhow, I just wanted to act out a little skit with the frozen figurines because I don't know, was Amazon just too discouraged to even try to market figurines? They should be. But as others have observed, what's the way forward? I don't think there really is a way forward into season 2. They've established the actors and actresses. They've established what they did already in season 1. You can't undo what they already showed you, which was awful. I think most potential viewers are probably not going to even bother with the first episode of season 2 if it ever comes out. And it'll be years from now. But no, 2 or 3 years is not going to erase the memory of what a bad taste in the mouth season 1 left. In my mind, there's only 2 paths forward for Amazon. One path would be just kill it. Just kill it now. Pay the actors and the showrunners and everything you promised that you'd pay them for season 2, and just don't film it. Cut your losses. That would probably be the simplest thing to do. So far, they show no evidence that they're going to do that. They're going to bring in some new showrunners that actually have a reputation of doing good work, and they say they're going to probably confine the 2 current showrunners to the writer's room. Well, if you probably confine them to the writer's room, you also better confine them to a playpen and don't allow them any access to any keyboard. Maybe they can talk for 5 minutes a day to the real writers for season 2, and then shut them up because they have nothing to add to this show. All they have done is detract from and poison the entire season 1. If they want to be in film, maybe they should be gaffers. They might be able to handle that. I'm not even sure what a gaffer is. All I know is that in the credits, they always show the gaffers. Or maybe they could be the second key grip. I'm not sure what that is either. But they keep them totally away from the writing. But even that's not going to do it. Because like I say, they already stamped this show with the entire season 1, which they can't undo unless they redid the whole story. I mean, I think they could even take the existing framework that is unveiling Sauron and forging the Rings of Power and the fall of Numenor. They could still stick with that theme, but just wipe out, redo the entire thing. Or what what I'd really like to see, I guess, I'm sure it's not going to happen, would be Peter Jackson make a deal with somebody to fund him and get the rights to do a movie version of The Forging of the Rings of Power and show Amazon how you do it. I think Amazon's problem, I'm just guessing, is that they're not a movie company. And despite having Amazon Prime Video, they're not a TV production company either. They've had a very hard time doing good content. And then why do they cut corners on the most important parts, like hiring good writers and hiring good directors? They spend all this money on God knows what. But anyhow, I think I made my point for the day. We're finished with season 1, Rings of Power. I personally, I would be fearful of even watching episode 1 of season 2. I'll wait and see what a few reviewers have to say. If they're astonishingly surprised, I might give it a look. But otherwise, I'm just not going to do it. Sorry, Amazon.